Ryan Borgwardt's life appeared as steady as the rippling waters of Green Lake in Wisconsin, calm on the surface but hiding depths no one could see. To his neighbors, friends, and even his family, Ryan was the image of a devoted father and dependable husband. He lived an unremarkable life, one defined by familiar rhythms, work, family dinners, and weekends spent at church events, but Ryan had secrets. Secrets that one August afternoon in 2024 would erupt into a plot so elaborate that it left a small town reeling and his name splashed across headlines. The plan had been forming for months. Restlessness, financial pressures, and a lingering desire for escape gnawed at him until they became impossible to ignore. Somewhere along the way the idea took shape, an idea as reckless as it was deliberate. He would disappear, not by simply leaving his life behind, but by dying in plain sight. The lake that his family knew as a place of peace and summer afternoons would become the perfect stage for his disappearance. On the morning of August 11, 2024, Ryan woke early. He moved through the day with a sense of quiet purpose, the weight of his decision hidden behind a veneer of normalcy. He said goodbye to his 3 children with the ease of a man who expected to see them again. No one would have guessed that as he drove toward Green Lake, his mind buzzed with the details of what was to come. He had planned it all: the overturned kayak, the sinking phone, the child-sized inflatable raft stashed out of view. Green Lake stretched before him when he arrived, vast and glassy, its surface reflecting a sunlit sky. It was the deepest, natural lake in Wisconsin, a quiet giant that seemed to swallow sound itself. The parking lot where he left his car was empty, just as he'd hoped. Pulling the kayak from the roof of his vehicle, he worked with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment in his mind 1,000 times. Ryan paddled out slowly, his strokes cutting through the water with methodical calm. As he drifted farther from shore, the lake seemed to close around him, the ripples from his kayak fading into stillness. It was here, at the deepest part, where the world felt hollow. He tipped the kayak with a deliberate lean. For a moment the splash was the only sound, as though the lake itself had swallowed him whole. Beneath the surface, Ryan let the cold water envelop him. His phone and wallet weighted sank to the bottom, disappearing into the dark. Surfacing carefully, Ryan clung to the underside of the kayak, steadying himself before retrieving the inflatable raft he had hidden. It was small, just enough to hold his weight. He paddled silently back toward shore, his body shivering, his mind locked onto what came next. He left no trace, no splashes, no ripples to tell the story. The wooded shoreline greeted him like an accomplice. Hidden among the trees was an electric bike, fully charged and waiting under a tarp. He had stashed it there weeks earlier, mapping out the quiet roads and forgotten paths he would take. From the lake, it would be hours before anyone knew he was missing. Hours before they found his kayak, adrift and empty. Hours he needed to vanish. Ryan pedaled into the night, the hum of the electric bike the only sound cutting through the forest. He avoided main roads, slipping through forgotten trails as if he were being pursued by something he couldn't name. By dawn, he reached Madison, Wisconsin and the bus station where his next step waited. The bus carried him to Detroit, just another passenger with tired eyes and an unremarkable face. He crossed into Canada with ease, the border guard barely glancing at him. His identification was solid, the story rehearsed. Soon, the plane took off, its engines drowning out the echoes of Green Lake. Ryan disappeared into Europe, first to Paris, then further east. Uzbekistan had been part of the plan all along, the rendezvous point with a woman he had been secretly communicating with. Back home, Green Lake became a place of mourning. Authorities searched for days, diving deep into the dark water in hopes of finding his body. His kayak, overturned and lonely, told the story of a tragic accident. Friends and family gathered at the water's edge, calling his name into the silence. Search teams scoured the area, their work stretching into weeks and costing the town tens of thousands of dollars. No one imagined that Ryan was alive. But even in Europe, freedom was elusive. The life he had dreamed of, far from the quiet pressures of Wisconsin, unraveled. He rented rooms in cities where no one knew his name. He lived in transit with nothing but a suitcase and a growing paranoia. The emails he had exchanged, the bank transfers he had made, they were all pieces of a puzzle investigators began to assemble back home. It started with small clues. Authorities noticed the inconsistencies, the trail he hadn't hidden well enough. As they pieced together Ryan's movements, his cash withdrawals, his border crossings, and his overseas connections, it became clear that he hadn't drowned at all. On December 10, 2024, Ryan Borgwardt returned to Wisconsin. His attempt to fake his death and start a new life had failed. The authorities were waiting. In the courtroom, Ryan sat quietly as the charges were read. He was charged with obstructing an officer, a misdemeanor for staging his disappearance. There were no grand defenses, no explanations. The weight of his choices filled the silence. His wife of 22 years filed for legal separation soon after, seeking sole custody of their children. The lake that had been his accomplice now became a symbol of everything he had lost. Green Lake, once peaceful and vast, now held the echoes of his failure. In the end, Ryan hadn't disappeared. He had simply delayed the inevitable. The story of Ryan Borgwardt became more than a local headline. It was a cautionary tale, a man who had tried to escape his life only to find that no matter how far you run, the truth follows. Let me know, what do you think of this case and which you would like to see next?